If I lost every single tool that I own and I had to start over right here in this empty garage, this is exactly how I would do it. From the first $100 spent up to a full professional workshop. I am not sponsored by any of these tool companies, so these opinions are honest. But this video is brought to us by the Woodworkers Guild of America. If you've ever dreamed of building furniture but didn't know where to start, this is the video that I wish I would have had when I got started. Typically, I work here in my main shop with all these big, expensive, fancy tools. But today, we're gonna transform this empty garage into a woodworking shop, mostly with budget-friendly tools, with a couple of exceptions. I'm gonna tell you when the budget tools will get the job done and when you should save up a little bit of extra money for the more expensive machines. And when I say woodworking, I mean furniture making and crafts and not DIY home improvement projects. Also, every woodworker has different project goals, the way they prefer to work, budgets, and styles. This is if I myself were starting over as a woodworker and artist. For straight cuts, you could use a table saw or circular saw. For curved cuts, you could use a bandsaw or jigsaw. And for pocket removal, you could use a router or chisel. I will mostly be talking about stationary tools, tools that will take up a footprint in your workspace. Just keep in mind that we could replace any of these tools with handheld power tools or the old-fashioned way with hand saws, chisels, and planes. The reason this video is so hard to make is that there are so many ways to make furniture. This is how I would do it if I were starting over. Let's begin. Experienced woodworkers might be shocked by my first tool choice, but there are two reasons the miter saw would be the first tool I would buy. The first reason I would suggest getting a miter saw right away is it's also a great home improvement DIY tool. You most definitely want the sliding compound saw. The 10-inch blade is the perfect size for fine woodworking, and I never tilt the head left or right because I don't make crown molding. That is not fine woodworking. That is DIY home improvement stuff. But it is nice that that feature is in there. The first thing you do after getting a miter saw is replace the stock blade, and I highly suggest getting a crosscut blade because I only do crosscuts on the miter saw, and that's gonna give you a nice clean cut. Eventually down the road, you're gonna wanna make a custom miter saw station. That's just gonna make your life a lot easier. But if you are just getting started and it's in your budget, I highly suggest purchasing a miter saw stand because it's got these little extension wings. I can roll this around easily. The main reason I think you should buy a miter saw first is you need a proper workbench. I made this workbench out of only 2x4s, a miter saw, and a drill. I've got plans for this as well as a very detailed video that takes you through step by step. Also, in this scenario, I'm assuming you already have a drill. In most cases, a budget miter saw like this is going to work great. In my main shop, I've got this super expensive Festool miter saw. The reason I have that high-end miter saw is it's got the highest rated dust collection, it's got less blade deflection, and it's just better built. But a budget saw is gonna get you a long way in a wood shop. Here, my Wen saw, the Wen stand, and new cross-cutting blade came out to $463. You can get a low-end used miter saw with used stand on Facebook Marketplace for $164. That includes getting a new blade. A high-end Festool miter saw and new stand is $1,975. Now that we've got a miter saw and a proper woodworking bench, let's get to the tool that most of you probably thought I was going to say first, and that is the table saw. For me and most furniture makers, the table saw is the centerpiece of the workshop. This is the one tool that if it is in your budget, you might want to splurge on. Technically, with the right jigs for the table saw, you don't even need a miter saw, and I worked like this for many years, but having two separate machines is a huge workflow improvement for me. I'm calling this my budget shop, but this particular table saw doesn't really fall into the budget category. This is the SawStop compact table saw, and it's got a safety feature where if the blade detects flesh, a brake slams up on the blade and then pulls it underneath the table, all within a fraction of a second, making it virtually impossible to chop off your finger or even draw blood. Since I'll be having students in here, I need the safest environment possible, so I'm spending a little bit of extra money on the SawStop. Safety, kickback, and table saw accidents deserves its own entire video. I used to have the Wen table saw, but I recently gave that to my brother. My biggest issue with these contractor style table saws is these small size, these super lightweight, and the flimsy fences, and it just makes it really hard to cut sheet goods. But all of that can be overcome with a proper table saw station, and of course, I've got a video on making one. But at first, you can get by with the stand that came with your saw. Also, these contractor table saws are much louder than a cabinet style saw, and the dust collection on them pretty much suck. This is a table saw station that I built in a previous video. I actually made this for the Wen saw. Now that I got the SawStop in here, I got some adjustments to make to it, but it's got some extension wings that the fence easily goes over. It's got an outfeed table. Inside the outfeed table is more storage. And then down below, we can have a dust collector. It's also on wheels, so I can move it around the shop wherever I need. The two things you're gonna wanna purchase right away after getting a new table saw is a good combination blade and a good miter gauge. The ones that came with the saw, pure garbage and made for DIY. Not fine woodworking. There's also an infinite number of jigs that you can make for the table saw to make it safer, faster, and easier to work with. But again, that's its whole own video. A low-end used table saw with a new blade and budget-friendly miter gauge is gonna cost around $185. My main shop has a huge 3 horsepower table saw with a very high-end miter gauge, and the cost of that is $6,071. Up next, we have the bandsaw. In my main shop, I have a 2 bandsaw setup, a small one for curves and small pieces, and then a large one for resawing and very large pieces. That 2 saw setup works great for my workflow. But if you're just getting started, one of these benchtop ones are going to work great for you. There's nothing wrong with this budget-friendly Wen saw, but I don't like it nearly as much as the Rikon 10305 in my main shop. That Rikon has a much higher cutting capacity and just a better built machine. But nothing wrong with this guy. There's a lot of Wen tools in this video, and you're probably thinking, this dude's sponsored by Wen. No, I made a video last winter where I bought every single Wen tool and reviewed them and made a video about that. That's why I have so many Wen tools. But at the end of the day, this Wen bench saw at $149 is a pretty darn good deal. And like any new saw, you gotta take the stock blade and throw it right in the ocean. I've got a Timberwolf on there right now. A low-end used bandsaw on Facebook Marketplace with a new blade is $78. A high-end 2 bandsaw setup with new blades is gonna run you $3,458. You need a way to drill holes straight up and down at set depths and repeated distances, and a benchtop drill press is gonna be perfect for you. At least perfect for me. There's not much else to say about drill presses except higher end ones are gonna be much heavier. Like this is pretty light. It's just gonna be better built and have a lot more travel. My drill press in my main shop is a benchtop one, but it's super heavy. It's got a built-in DRO. It's got an automatic depth stop and reverse, and it's got all kinds of crazy features that are complete overkill. But woodworkers love overkill. You're also gonna need some brad point drill bits as well as a set of Forstner bits. Low end used on Facebook Marketplace with new drill bits, $86. On the high end with new drill bits, $1,441. Some of you might think that a joiner or a planer is going to be next on the list, but they are not needed if you can get your wood dimensionalized. My local hardwood dealer, KenCraft, will cut, joint, and plane boards for you at a cost. So therefore, I'm gonna push them back in the line a little bit. So next up for me are sanders. I hate sanding Proper sanding takes a long time, so I tend to invest a lot of money in specialized sanders. If you are just starting out, a combination belt and spindle sander along with a random orbit sander is going to get you a long way. And that's going to cover most of the sanding that you're going to need. If you have the space and budget, I prefer a dedicated disc sander, a spindle sander, a drum sander, a random orbit sander, a corner sander, and a detail sander. Like I said, I spend a lot of money on sanding because I'm just trying to make it easier on me. It's not a task that I like doing, therefore I'm willing to spend the money on some specialized tools. Your woodworking journey is just that. It's a journey. You're not going to buy all of your tools at one time unless you're making a video called I Bought All the Wen Tools. You buy one tool at a time as your budget allows and as you learn what you need. Used on Facebook Marketplace, a low-end used disc belt sander and orbital sander gonna run you about 110 bucks. A new disc sander, spindle sander, drum sander, random orbit sander, corner sander, and detail sander, $2,227 plus sandpaper. Before we keep going, I want to take a quick minute to thank the sponsor of this video, and honestly, it could not be more fitting. If I were just getting started as a woodworker again, I really wish something like the Woodworkers Guild of America existed 13 years ago when I first started. Back then, I was completely on my own trying to figure out which tools to buy, how to lay out my shop, and how to actually use the machines I had. It was a bit of trial and error, and a lot of expensive mistakes. But the Woodworkers Guild of America is exactly the kind of resource I wish I had back then. It's a massive online community full of premium woodworking videos, step-by-step instruction, and articles taught by experienced woodworkers who actually know their craft. They've got videos like woodworking tool setup and maintenance, George and Jimmy's shop tips, my podcast mate, Jimmy DeResta, and articles like Getting Started with Woodworking, all super relevant if you're building your shop or figuring out where to start. They're always adding premium videos, so there's constantly fresh content to keep you learning and inspired. And remember earlier in the video when I said every woodworker is on a different path and has different project goals and setups and ways they want to work? Well, if hand tools are your thing, they have a full course called The Fundamentals of Hand Tools. It's a deep dive into traditional woodworking, sharpening, planing, and chiseling. All the stuff that connects you to the craft at a whole different level. What I really love is that the Woodworkers Guild of America isn't about watching videos, it's about joining a community. You can ask questions, share ideas, and see how other woodworkers solve problems differently. Sometimes it's one small tip that changes the way you woodwork forever. Those are the magical little moments. So if you want to check it out, go to the URL that I have here on screen. It's also listed down in the video description right below this video. And get your first full year of the Woodworkers Guild of America Premium for just $1.49. It is just $1.49 for new members to the Woodworkers Guild of America. That is an incredible deal. The problem with planers is all these portable ones, they're about 12 or 13 inches wide. Anything bigger than that is a huge, massive jump in budget and space. A lunchbox style benchtop planer is gonna get you a long way. In my main shop, I have a huge Rikon that can plane up to 16 inches wide. I am personally not planing boards 16 inches wide very often, but it is nice for my workflow to be able to run two boards in at the same time. 12, 13 inches is going to cover 99% of your woodworking. And if it doesn't work, of course, there's all kinds of jigs and other ways around it. Some of you might remember that I got the Wen planer in the I Bought All the Wen Tools video, and that planer came with missing gears and it just didn't work out of the box. So I wasn't able to give it a rating. And Wen replaced that planer and it worked fantastic and great. I have since given that away to my brother. And I've got this trusty old DeWalt that I've had for years and years. And even though this isn't a budget tool, it's going to live here in my budget shop. Not much else to say about planers. Low end used on Facebook, about $275. On the high end, Rikon doesn't make the one that I have anymore, but this size with the helical heads runs around $4,500. A joiner is a tool that I could get by just fine without. It is a nice to have tool. There are other ways to joint and face boards. With that being said, in my main shop, I got a big old Rikon with a helical head and I love it. Here, I have this little 6-inch Wen. For me, a benchtop joiner like this is pretty much useless. I can't flatten wide face boards with this, and I can't joint long boards. So I'm probably just going to sell this and get a used one to put here in the budget shop. A low end used 6-inch joiner on Facebook, $275. High end 8-inch joiner with helical head, $3,500. You can never have enough woodworkers telling you you can never have enough clamps. 10 years ago, I bought some aluminum bar clamps from Harbor Freight and they would snap and break on me all the time. These days, the Harbor Freight aluminum bar clamps are much better. I also love the Harbor Freight F-style clamps. Every time I go there, I grab a couple new ones. I will be honest with you, I think you can get all of your clamps from Harbor Freight. They're pretty decent these days and much cheaper than the big name ones. You don't need to buy all your clamps at once, just buy them as you need them. Starting off, maybe give yourself a budget of $250 for a variety of clamps. After 10 years of doing this, I probably have at least $2,000 in clamps. Probably a lot more. That's just what happens. You can never have enough woodworkers telling you you can never have enough clamps. Measuring. This is a whole rabbit hole, which can be way more expensive than you could ever imagine. But getting started, we're just gonna keep it simple. You need a couple of tape measures and you need a good combination square. That's gonna get you a long ways. You don't have to get the $150 combination square, but I do suggest not getting the cheapest combination square. It's a tool that you will have for decades. It's okay to spend a little bit of money on it. At a minimum, I would spend $50 on a decent combination square and tape measure. After 13 years, you're gonna find a lot of premium and specialized measuring tools in your arsenal. Let's just pretend I have no more than $1,000 worth. It is a rabbit hole, and there are some high-end, amazing measuring and marking devices. I almost forgot to put this category in my notes, but it is so important, and that is the router. I suggest having 3 routers. I like having a little palm trim router. I like having a plunge router. My preferred way to use a router is in a router table with a router lift. I don't have this one set up yet, but I'm about to. And so I would have a 3rd dedicated router in this table. It is no secret to the viewers of this channel that the router is my least favorite tool of all time. It's loud, it's messy, and it's super dangerous, which is why I prefer using a router table, because I'd rather take the piece to the tool instead of the tool to the piece. But sometimes you can't help it and you need to use a handheld router. You're also gonna need a variety of router bits. I suggest starting out with just a standard kit and then buy the specialized bits as you need them. Since I forgot to outline this part of the video, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but used routers plus new bits is gonna cost you this much, and new routers and new bits with a fancy table and a table lift is gonna cost you this much. I don't even know where to begin with consumables. You're gonna need like paint brushes to get glue into things. You're gonna need glue, all different types of glue. You're gonna need pencils and sandpaper and all of these things that you're constantly going through. So at the very beginning, let's just give ourselves a budget of 150 bucks. Another thing that I forgot that I don't even have with me here in the shop is dust collection. You want an actual dust extractor and not just a shop vac. I will likely get 2 of them for the shop and just move them around as I needed. My main shop has a dust collector that's dedicated to nearly every tool. The pricing of that is going to be very specialized to your needs and how you're gonna run ductwork, or if you're gonna run ductwork at all. But on the low end, it's gonna be this much. And on the high end, it's gonna be this much. I do sell PDF plans to my woodworking projects, but only Patreon members get access to the raw Fusion files. And I wanna thank this month's top Patreon supporters, and that's X2 Crafted Chaos, Jonathan Ransom, Jim from Wiserbees, Ron from Gnomeworks, Jason Ramos, Tom, Chris from Hoffman Woodworks, Jeremy Johnstone, Andy from P10 Workshop, and Letters to Words. Patreon members get monthly coupons, access to our private Discord, and a lot more. Now, if you actually want to see how I built this workbench for less than $100 out of only 2x4s, you're gonna wanna click here. You also might wanna check out the I bought every single Wen tool video. That is gonna wrap it up. As always, be safe, have fun, stay passionate, and make something. Thank you, Daniel.
You bet, Dave.
All right.